creating alignment among the key stakeholders it's huge, and it's very often very challenging. I guess we kind of consider our workshops to be, mostly strategy, but also part therapy session, because it's really amazing to see how out of alignment the members of leadership are in their thinking, and to try to get everybody on the same page can be a stumbling block for a company.
Welcome to the Optimize podcast, brought to you by VisibleThread. We bring you the best and latest insights for everything from government contracting on topics such as BD, capture, proposal management, and business writing. Every series of Optimize is hosted by an expert in their field who brings their expertise and real-life experience to each episode. This podcast series is hosted by Ton Wilson, President of Intellect. Ton is a renowned GovCon influencer who has spearheaded business processes and bid strategies that have clinched contracts worth over $150 billion to her clients. She is a bid strategist, executive coach, mentor, Marvel and DC enthusiast, and self-proclaimed bourbon lover. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe on wherever you are listening. Now let's join Ton on this episode.
In a world saturated with messages, crafting an authentic narrative is both an art and a challenge. Central to this is the power of effective communication. And in today's episode, we'll delve into the fundamentals of branding, guided by the unique perspective of our guest, Chris Brinker. Blending her expertise in marketing with the principles of Tai Chi, Chris offers a distinctive approach to understanding and mastering the art of branding. Our guest today is Chris Brinker, partner and VP of Relationship Development at Ocean 5 Strategies, and a branding expert renowned for uncovering a brand's true essence. Chris's professional journey is a unique blend of contrast, combining the calm and focus of Tai Chi with the dynamic world of branding and marketing. Her expertise transcends the conventional boundaries of the boardroom, extending into the serene world of Tai Chi, where she imparts wisdom and inspiration. This fusion of disciplines enriches her approach to branding, making it as comprehensive and thoughtful as it is results-oriented. And with her extensive experience in marketing and this distinctive perspective, Chris offers an invaluable insight into the core of branding. Today, we're excited to explore these insights and learn from Chris's rich experience. Welcome, Chris.
Ton, that was a heck of an introduction. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. And so I have a few questions before we dive into our main discussion. But in a world so obsessed with buzzwords, how do you maintain authenticity in your branding approach without sounding like a walking advertisement? Is there a secret sauce to being authentic and relatable?
Secret sauce? Not sure about secret sauce. I do agree with you about the buzzwords. I have to say that I'll admit that when people start to overuse some of the branding and marketing buzzwords, or I find myself needing to use them myself, on the inside, I can feel my eyes rolling just a bit. Just being perfectly transparent. I think branding itself is actually one of the biggest and misunderstood buzzwords. Many people consider branding to really only be concerned with colors, pictures, logos, fonts, the visual stuff. And these elements are important, but they are really only a fraction of the puzzle pieces that go into branding. Branding is really a lot wider and deeper than that. Really, to remain authentic and relatable, I think you need to do a little bit of soul searching, a thorough audit of your company, goals, visions, values, and what problems your company solves for your target audience. I guess branding is really, it's about controlling the narrative and determining how you want to show up. Not only really to potential clients, but also other audiences. For government contractors, it means also relating to teaming partners and potential recruits. So I'd say part of the key to maintaining authenticity is really to maintain transparency and consistent in your messaging.
I so agree with that. And I think sometimes people use branding in a very superficial kind of way. Like you said, just scratching the surface of it. The logos, the colors, those are the easy, fun things, but really to the heart of it is diving deep and really kind of looking inward. So couldn't agree with you more on that. And so, communication is kind of like the essence of branding, yet it's kind of easy to get lost in all of this jargon, especially in the government contracting section, industry. And so how can we ensure clarity and engagement when we're trying to convey a company's branding narrative without, going into this alphabet soup or industry jargon and get lost in all of that? I get it. You say this and drop this to make sure that, you're smart and, you're being caught, they put things in hashtags and different things like that. But sometimes it gets to be a little bit much and you lose that whole, essence of what you're trying to communicate.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's really easy to get lost. I like your the way you phrase it, in a jungle of jargon. And yeah, no group deals with more jargon than government contractors, the alphabet soup and all of the acronyms. And really to be able to clearly articulate your value and the problems that you solve, the pain that you take away, just understanding who it is that you're trying to influence are really key. We at Ocean 5, we work with government contracting companies, and we see a lot of techno speak on their websites, their capability statements, and even just talking to them, one-to-one in person. Most often the people that these companies are trying to communicate with are not actually the technical people. So people need to keep in mind that you're creating messaging that really needs to speak human. And, don't assume the people that are, for instance, coming to your website and reading your RFP responses are the technical people. What the people really want to know is, how are you going to solve their problems? They need to solve their problems. They need to meet their deadlines, and they need to achieve their mission. And they're not really concerned with what gadget, gizmo, service you're going to do it with. These people are people, and they need to know how you're going to help them. We found that often having an outside party conduct a strategic meeting of all the stakeholders to draw out all that critical information and then condense it down, and so they can actually now clearly articulate the messaging. And that can be a big help. And really, once you have your messaging nailed, then you don't have to totally rely on jargon.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. And it's what I call the so what question. So when, I come in, because I'm an outsider, I'm not drinking Kool-Aid, I'm technical enough to kind of understand the technology or the solution that they're trying to pitch. But at the end of the day, if you can't answer my so what, then you really don't have a strong value proposition that may not really resonate, with the end customer or who the end user is. But we've had previous chats about, this whole, me, I'm all about being authentic, but, being tactical at the same time. There's a dynamic between authenticity and tactical aspects of branding. And it's always so eye-opening when you and I talk, because we agree more than we disagree. But you're always, every time we talk, I'm always learning something new and so intriguing, which leads us to, this discussion that we're having today to kind of explore and dig a little deeper into your branding philosophy, especially around authenticity. I think, you have a really kind of unique and fresh look about that. So, I kind of want to let's pull that thread a little bit here in our discussion. But, branding often casts a long shadow over, the business landscape. But from your perspective and experience, what does branding truly encapsulate? Can you kind of help unravel some of the common myths that might, lead a lot of these companies and, branding, marketing people astray?
Yeah, sure. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest myths is really, it's a very narrow viewpoint of what branding is all about. Branding's really, it's about what you look like, what you sound like, how you behave, and other characteristics, and really understanding who you are as a company and how you want to be perceived is a great first step. It's really how you want to show up, not about your products and your services. If you keep in mind, it's about how you make people feel and what is the experience your audience will have when they engage and interact with your company, and how do you want them to feel? What experience do you want them to have? So I think of a couple really well-known brands, and I'm just going to go with the big ones that people will recognize. For instance, there's a really big difference if you think about Nike, and their branding really conveys something like inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and how do you feel when you interact with that brand, and then compare that to Lego, right? That company, which is, it's really about creativity and imagination and playfulness. And I have to admit, I still love playing Legos, but it's a very different feeling. And so, it's the experience. And I know we're talking about the government contracting world and not B2C, business to consumer, but and there is a drastic difference, but you can kind of see where I'm going with that. And the nature of these differences will ultimately lead to decisions that are made by your essential customers and as well as your teaming partners and employees.
Hello.
So I think another big misunderstanding about branding is that it gets handed down, in an organization from the top down. Top people make the decisions and they hand it down, and then it just is. But we recommend getting feedback from all of the people that your brand touches is also incredibly important, and that can be your employees, it could be your clients, just really your salespeople, their business development. Getting feedback from those folks is really important too.
And you do see that more on the government contracting side, and I'm really some companies have done a really great job. Octo IBM, they put a lot of time and attention into their branding, like and it impacts their company culture. And like a lot of times they I think the culture kind of feeds into the direction of their branding that will attract other people, other companies that want to work with them. Same thing with Riva, right? Riva has a lot of philanthropy. They do wonderful work. They're one of the big contractors out there. They've got a really great brand. They've got a very different feel about them, like they're fun. They give back to community. And so I think there's some really great examples in our industry that you can kind of model after, or at least, admire and bring that internally and try to not, like mimic or replicate, but kind of see how you can kind of forge a different path for your organization that kind of suits, the style and the culture and, the customers that you're trying to attract and employees too.
Employees, and that there is a huge challenge now more than ever with attracting and retaining top talent. And I mean, it's a bit of a war out there, and really making sure that you are considering your brand, how your recruits, potential employees are going to interact with it, because they want to know, do I want to work for this company or do I want to work for your competitor? So yeah, really taking that into consideration is also huge.
Yep, exactly. So, our discussion about like strategic core of branding has always really resonated with me. And there's so many different opinions and approaches and voices in a company. Aligning to everyone's, familiar narrative can be kind of challenging. How do you, can you share some thoughts on creating more of an alignment between all the stakeholders and why it's crucial for, branding success?
Yeah. And you hit it right on the head. Creating alignment among the key stakeholders it's huge, and it's very often very challenging. When we run our marketing and messaging workshops for our clients, the first thing that we do is really try to get input from all the key stakeholders and, and try to work towards that alignment. I guess we kind of consider our workshops to be, mostly strategy, but also a part therapy session, because it's really amazing to see how out of alignment the members of leadership are in their thinking, and to try to get everybody on the same page is really can be a stumbling block for a company. And then, once you have everybody's input, then you really just need to sit down and take a good hard look and draw out what is truly important. And then the next step after that would be creating very clear and concise company messaging that then flows into important tools like the company website, your capability statement, sales pitch decks, proposals, just really everything, because having the key messaging align across every touch point that your target market comes in contact with. And remember, could be employees, it could be teaming partners, could be your end client, influencers. That's what actually develops and is the key to brand trust. So you want to keep in mind clarity and transparency and authenticity when you're creating your company messaging, and keeping it consistent, just keeping it consistent.
Yeah, I think two of the things that you just said here really kind of are a sticking point with me is the consistency part, but it's the trust, right? It's trust on all levels. It's the trust internally within your own internal stakeholders, and it's also establishing that trust externally too. Some companies, and I'm not going to name names to protect the guilty, but some companies have a very good and impressive outward appearance. But when you really dig deeper into what is it like working there? What is it like working for the company? What is it like teaming with that company? You get a whole different story. So you really do need to, dig deep sometimes and not be fooled, by some really slick work that's kind of out there. So it's a small industry, y'all. It's, we hear and see and speak amongst ourselves. So that is something that I think companies should be really kind of concerned and mindful of. So, but in the business realm, there's marketing dynamics and public perception are constantly, like I said, constantly in flux. This fluidity is such a challenge for brands striving to kind of evolve while remaining kind of true. You want to kind of evolve and change and be agile, but you don't want to change so much that you don't recognize yourself. But can you share some of your insights on how a brand can, effectively navigate some of these tides of change while still kind of making sure that the evolution still resonates with the shifting market, but public perceptions, and stays aligned with your missions and goals? So can we do all of that? Can we be all, do all, and still be true to ourselves?
I love this question in the consideration of fluidity, constant change, navigating the changing tides of business. That's really all largely the inspiration behind the Ocean 5 brand. Just a little history or background in case people are not aware that due to the Earth's changing environment, Fifth Ocean was declared back in the year 2000. And prior to that, we were taught that there were 4 oceans. So an ocean is actually defined by environmental conditions that, that we considered that the ever-changing, unpredictable environment that created a fifth ocean was also very representative of what businesses face every day. And part of what we focus on in our marketing programs for our clients is fluidity and the ability to pivot with change. Change is going to happen. You have to be agile enough to adapt and stay in front of it. It's also a great opportunity for me to weave in what I teach in my Tai Chi classes, that really to thrive, you need to remain flexible and at the same time build strength, endurance, and you also have to become really sensitive to the ground that you walk on in order to maintain your balance. I think you've just asked a question I could probably talk about forever. But one of our Ocean 5 differentiators is that we utilize an agile project management style in our marketing programs, kind of borrowed a bit from the agile project management from software development. And, we feel like when you're agile, you can pivot during unexpected change. And it truly ensures that you're always focusing on the most important activity that ultimately is driving towards the business growth and meeting the strategic goals. And, if you remain stuck in what I call a menu style program, there is really little room for adaptation and change. And you kind of get what you get every month, and if something changes, you really don't have the ability to pivot.
Yeah. And here, all this time that I've known you, I thought Ocean's 5 was a homage to the Ocean's 11 movies. So you learned something.
We'll take the recognition. I mean, we'll take it. But no, it was inspired by an article that I read on the NOAA website.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, if Julia Roberts is listening, we'll have you on the show anytime. So putting that out there. Hey, if it can work for Travis Kelce, who knows? All right.
Gotcha.
So let's continue with this. I love this whole ocean ship type of, analogies here that we're using. But, when you're steering the ship of branding, let's say, through these turbulent waters of marketing dynamic demands and a compass awareness, like a map or a strategic foresight and a crew with stakeholders, how would you explain or help a client for charting a new course over branding landscape to rally the crew around a coherent narrative? Moreover, how can proven strategies be intertwined with a brand's authentic essence to navigate toward success?
So I love all the ocean analogies, Tan. We begin all of our engagements with a thorough understanding of not just the marketing goals, but the growth goals of the company that we're working with. We typically work with companies that have an aggressive growth goal and have some kind of timeline in mind. Mostly these are companies that have come through what we call business infancy and the teenage years. And really, in their own words, they identify themselves that it's time to look and sound like a grown-up company. And that's their words that they come to us with. We're working with established companies that recognize that they've been fortunate and they've done a good job. And sometimes they've just been lucky that they've gotten where they've gotten to at this point. But they also recognize if they continue only doing what they've been doing, they're not going to ultimately reach their growth potential and their growth goals. Once we understand the growth goals of a company, we'll drill down into creating the messaging and the visual brand assets that will propel them towards their goals. The process usually begins with a strategy workshop, and that's where we get all the key stakeholders on the same page, and that creates the clarity that the company needs to really be successful. And as I said, it's strategy with a bit of therapy. So we really recognize with the phrase failing to plan is planning to fail. And I know we've all heard that, but we really like that quote. And all of our programs follow a strategy. And we've even trademarked our proven process. We called it SWIM. And more water analogy. SWIM stands for strategy with implementation and measurement. So we basically create the strategy, we implement the programs, we measure the progress, and then in the measurement, we see where we need to pivot and possibly adapt where necessary, so that we're really constantly moving towards the strategic goals. And we generally also advise people not to try to measure everything. You can really get bogged down in there's so many things to measure.
Yeah.
And part of the success is realizing, what things you need to measure and what things just aren't important. And people generally refer to those as vanity metrics, or sometimes it's just noise. So once you've determined what makes up your brand and you've clarified your messaging, then you really need to get alignment throughout the whole company from the top down. And we talked about before, consistency really is critical. And ultimately that will ensure happy customers, happy teaming partners, happy employees, and will lead to the growth and the success of the company.
No, that's great. We go from a vanity to let's just get really serious about like my next question here, because you provided so many insights and actual nuggets in this discussion that I have another serious question to ask you. If you had a superpower that would make you unbeatable in winning government contracts or a new customer, what would it be? And you do get extra points if you can relate this to a superhero, since I'm a huge Marvel fan.
All right, now you're really tapping into my inner geek. I am a big fan of X-Men comics. So while I have to admit that ultimately I think my favorite superhero really is Nightcrawler, I think the answer to your question would ultimately be the superpower of continuous adaptation. So I think the winner of the ability to adjust to any situation and ensure their survival would be Darwin. So do I get any extra points?
So you picked two. So yes, maybe I'll double your score on that. I don't know too much more.
Well, I just mentioned the first one, but the answer,
okay. All right. Anyway. I might actually subtract points. I don't know. You're taking away from the superheroes. But I digress. But seriously, like in your experience with branding strategies, how do they differ for new entrepreneurs versus established business owners? Because their perspectives are really different, while still kind of being authentic in this competitive market.
Part of a brand strategy for a new startup often centers around, how do I bootstrap this? They're just starting off, and everything is really kind of an experiment. You still need to focus on creating a unique brand and understanding your differentiators, so that you can really resonate with your target audience. But for the most part, you are doing a lot, if not all of it, yourself. And in contrast, an established business, they generally have the advantage of being able to create a marketing budget, which would allow them to bring in outside expertise, outside opinion, get a third party fresh look. And also their brand has been out there for a while and it's been tested. And that's important. You need to test your brand and get feedback and make sure that, that it's working the way that you think it will. And generally a company that's moving from teenager to adult really needs to audit their brand, to make sure that they're still relevant and possibly refine and refresh it. But typically, unless they've gone through some drastic change, like a merger or acquisition, for example, the current existing brand, it doesn't need to go back to the drawing board again. It's that small pivot. It's that small change, more of like tweaking and refining. And as far as authenticity, I'm going to go back to transparency and consistency. Create a strategy, follow through with implementation, measure, adjust, and at that point, maybe only a degree or two. And then you have a bigger annual check-in just to make sure that you are in fact on track.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that really kind of will apply to both organizations is just kind of getting out of your head. I think having a fresh perspective, having another, viewpoint on where you are, where you want to be, to see if they are aligned, I think is great, regardless of whether or not, you're new or, you've got an established brand. I know I elicit those opinions all the time. I'm always like, hey, am I missing the mark? Am I staying true to my brand? And I think our company is now in our 4.0 part of our brand. And so it's ever evolving. You're trying to stay ahead of the trends. You're trying to stay, true to what you are, but still kind of showing that, the growth and staying relevant. It's a challenge, but I definitely agree with eliciting, external insights on that. So, all right. So quick fire here as we wrap up a little bit. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Single word responses. I have yet to get single word responses, which is fine. No one ever follows instructions, but that's okay. That's what happens when you have interesting people on your show.
Have you ever known me to answer anything in a single word? Ever?
No. The only time I ever answer in a single word is when I'm very upset. So if I'm at a loss for words, everyone should clear the room. So I agree with you on that one. But first question, what's your go-to book for branding insights?
I often look at books as bibliotherapy. So again, back to the therapy. I'm not sure I have an all-encompassing go-to book, but I am currently rereading. It's called Building a Story Brand. It's a very long title. Building a Story Brand. Clarify your message so customers will listen. That's by Donald Miller. I think the most critical ingredient that goes into branding really is clarifying your messaging, and that's a really good book I resonate with.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately for Mr. Miller, I may never pick up that book because the title is too long to hold my attention. I don't have the patience, unfortunately, to sit down and read books unless it's very small. But I guess it's because I sit and read hundreds of pages of solicitations every day. So I've had my fill of words by the end of the day.
I bet.
Yes. So what is a brand that resonates with you the most and why?
Really? So that is a bit of a tough one. And just, I guess if I had to pick one and to make sure that everybody's heard of it, I guess I would go with Costco. And the way I see their brand is really, it's all about customer experience and the quality of their products and being a great value. But happy customers is sort of the number one most important thing. And that just really resonates with me. So one word answer, Costco.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Costco is like a twice a week visit for me. And you're right. If Costco endorses it and wants to buy it in as big of a bulk as they do, they're going to be able to move it. And so why would they buy a horrible product? Every once in a while, don't get me wrong. There's been a couple of misses with Costco, but that's just, buy flavor to it. Maybe it wasn't my thing.
Right.
But they really do know their customers. And I don't know if people know this, but the Costco, I think I've hit every Costco in like the DC metro area, which is where I'm an expat from. And every one of them is different. And I didn't realize this, but the one in Sterling in particular is very focused. And that's their flagship where they will try new products. And so if you ever want to try, like new ones, that's the one to go to. Otherwise,
that is the one I shop at. So,
yes, there you go. You are going to the right one.
I'm set.
Yes, you are. So last question here. So what's the best or one of the best logos you've ever seen besides yours and mine, of course?
Of course. So that one's actually a little easier because I repeat this over and over again, not every time I see the logo, but and I hate to go with one of the big ones, but I am going to say Amazon. And of course that deserves an explanation. I think they've incorporated so many key factors in one very simple logo. And if you look at the way it's set up, you've got the A, the Z, the arrow. So it's kind of like the fact that you can purchase anything from A to Z. They can ship from point A to point Z, and that path actually creates the little smile. So I just think it's clever. It's incredibly simple, and it's also incredibly legible with which a lot of people miss that point when they're creating a logo, is legibility.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I love Amazon and especially at certain times of year. And now that I live in the Woodlands, there's a huge distribution center here. I can get things within hours. So that's kind of tough when you're raising a 13-year-old and having to teach him patience when it's like, well, what do you mean I have to wait till Monday to get something? But for me, being a Gen X kid, I would go with like McDonald's, grow up on it, know it, recognize it, look forward to seeing it. So, yeah, even to this day at my age, I'm like, I still look for it. It's like old habits kind of die hard sometimes.
And if people want to do a little research, they really actually have an amazing brand story. So that's kind of one that's fun to read about.
They really do. Yeah. So today's discussion has shed light on the essence of stakeholder engagement, the importance of a well thought out strategy, and the power of authenticity and branding. And so some of the key takeaways from our discussion are authenticity, which is essential for genuine and brand engagement, strategic balance, effective communications with relatable content, and public perception, which is key to smart branding and positioning. So I want to thank you, Chris, so much for your invaluable insights today. I always enjoy speaking with you. You're a great person. You're highly sought after expert in this industry. And to our listeners, we encourage you to connect with Chris and explore the depths of branding a little bit further. And remember that during the hustle, take a moment to kind of, like she says, have some self-care, be it Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, or a well-deserved vacation or a break. Chris, it's really been fun having you, and we look forward to having you back again in the future if you'll have us.
Oh, if you will have me, I would love that very much. This has been great. It's a great experience. We talk about experience. So, and honestly, there are just so many misperceptions about what branding really is. And there are a lot of misperceptions in general in the GovCon world. So we do have quite a bit to talk about, not just branding. We work with both B2B and B2G companies. And, we understand that there are differences in their marketing strategies and also the best practices that are needed. They do tend to, there are some similarities, but there are some really key differences that you have to keep in mind. And, we have loads of resources on our website. We have articles, we have checklists, we have guides, we have webinar recordings. Hoping we get a good recording, and I'll put this one up on our Learning Labs library as well. And, for that, people can go to ocean5strategies.com. That's ocean singular, the number 5, strategies plural.com. And if you have some need for some Tai Chi, you can also find me on justbreathetaichi.com. And to your point, Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, whatever you wind up resonating with, it is really important to do some self-care, especially this time of year.
Exactly. Well, that's a wrap, folks. So keep sharing, sipping, and strategizing. And remember, the secret ingredient is a genuine connection and a glass of bourbon infused with a generous slash of wit.
And that wraps up this episode of the Optimize podcast. A big shout out to our amazing host, Ton Wilson, and our guest, Chris Brinker. Optimize is brought to you by VisibleThread, the language analysis platform that helps you improve the efficiency and compliance of RFPs, contracts, and mission-critical business writing. Using VT Writer and VT Docs can be game-changing for efficiency and compliance in your documents. For more information, visit VisibleThread.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you are listening. Stay tuned for more insightful discussions on the Optimize podcast. Until next time, thanks for joining us.